Good morning and welcome to the Unity Center broadcast on Facebook. My name is Reverend Wendy Craig-Purcell and I'm the minister at the Unity Center. To our beloved Unity community, it's good to connect with you in this way. And those of you who are joining us perhaps for the very first time ever, it's my honor and privilege to welcome you into this experience. I like to start our service with the striking and the playing of our antique Tibetan singing bowl. And we do this to help us mark the fact that we are choosing to enter into a different state of awareness, a different state of consciousness. And oftentimes, if we have a sound that helps us to connect with that reality, it can be helpful. So I invite you just to listen to this sound and allow it to help you move into this time and this shared experience together. Namaste. As we continue to be together in this new format and continue to find ways to remind ourselves that we are connected spiritually even when we are apart from one another physically. One of the practices I personally have always found to be very helpful is the practice of working to keep my eyes as open as I possibly can. And I'm not referring to the physical eyes so much as I am the inner eye, the eye of insight. And as we go through these difficult times together and separately, let us keep our eyes open and our heart open as well. And so I invite you to join me right now in just a moment of centering prayer, that we come together in this time and this space with a heart that is open, with a mind that is open, knowing that we are drawn together by one presence and one power, the infinite, guiding, loving presence of God. And as we step into this time of prayer together, let it also be a time that we feel a sense of gratitude, a sense of appreciation for those on the front lines who are doing so much to help us stay safe and to find a way, to find a cure. And so we allow that feeling of gratitude to arise in us and to extend beyond us. Thank you, Spirit, for the good that is present in our lives, and help us to keep our hearts open, our minds clear, and our eyes open. And so we begin. Amen and amen. I've selected an opening song for us from another one of my favorite New Thought recording artists. His name is Carl Anthony, and the song is Open My Eyes.
Open my eyes, let in the light again. Open my eyes, let in the light again. Open my eyes, fill them with joy again. Open my eyes, fill them with joy again. Heal my heart, let me begin again. Heal my heart, let me begin again. Open my eyes, open my eyes again. Open my eyes, open my eyes. Take a deep breath, breathe in the strength again. Take a deep breath, breathe in the strength again. Open my eyes, open my eyes again. Open my eyes, open my eyes. Heal my heart, let me begin again.
Thank you, Carl. Won't it be wonderful when we're able to be back together physically at the Unity Center campus, being with one another and being able to see and be with our beautiful music team and our guest artists? I miss that, and I know you miss that as well. I'm beginning a new series today, and it's a series that's based on a book I wrote. The book is called Ask Yourself This, and it's all about questions to open the heart and the mind and expand the soul. And today, the area that we're going to be looking at is questions to help us grow spiritually. And here's some readings that I've selected to get us started. The first is from best-selling author Anthony Robbins. Quality questions create a quality life. Successful people ask better questions, and as a result, they get better answers. This one is from Lloyd Alexander, an American novelist. We learn more by looking for the answer to a question and not finding it than we do from learning the answer itself. Let me repeat that. We learn more by looking for the answer to a question and not finding it than we do from learning the answer itself. And I believe that what Lloyd Alexander is pointing to is that when we are really struggling with and trying to understand something and to look for an answer, to do that, we've got to expand and grow. Here's one from author James Thurber. It is better to know some of the questions than all of the answers. Here's one from another author, Najib Mahfouz. You can tell whether a man is clever by his answers. You can tell whether he is wise by his questions. Here's one from Brother David Standel-Rast. He's a Benedictine monk, author, and spiritual leader. Excuse me. Sometimes people get the mistaken notion that spirituality is a separate department of life, kind of the penthouse of existence. But rightly understood, it is a vital awareness that pervades all realms of our being. And here's one from the transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson. Life must be lived on a higher plane. We must go up to a higher platform to which we are always invited to ascend. There, the whole aspect of things change. In each of these, we are reminded, I think, of the power of questions and the experience of growing and advancing, spiritually. We're going to move into a time of prayer and meditation together right now. And if you are part of the Unity community, you know how much we value the experience of prayer and meditation. Unity was founded on the principle of prayer. And we know that there is divine guidance and wisdom present within each and every one of us. But oftentimes we are so busy or we are so distracted that we've lost the ability to listen deeply and to listen to and for that still small voice of God. And we believe that prayer and meditation is the pathway to that. So I invite you to find a comfortable position. I imagine if you're at home, you're probably in a comfy place in your home, maybe still in your PJs or maybe with a cup of coffee. But I invite you to set that aside and just find a comfortable position in your chair or even lying back on in your bed. And we're going to begin as we always do with a focus on our breathing, taking deep breaths in and deep breaths out, and just allowing ourselves to empty out, to be present, and to open up. I'll also be sharing with you some chant music by our music director, Janet Hammer, a piece called Ad Gure Name, and the words or the meaning of the chant that you'll be hearing in just a few moments are these. To primal wisdom, I bow. To true identity, wisdom, I bow. To the wisdom of the ages, I bow. To the great unseen wisdom, I bow. So go ahead now and close your eyes. And allow your attention to turn within. And take a nice, deep breath in. And as you let that breath go, really practice the feeling of letting go. And take another nice, deep and mindful breath in. And as you let that breath go, practice being right where you are. And a third deep and mindful breath in. And as you let that breath go, practice the feeling of opening up to that inner wisdom. Breathing in deeply again. Releasing the breath and letting go. Breathing in deeply again. Releasing the breath. Being here. And again, breathing in deeply. Releasing the breath and opening up. Continuing to be present to each breath, the breath in, the breath out, releasing and letting go. Continuing to be mindful of each breath. Allow your attention to move to the area of your heart, the center of your chest. Imagining now that each mindful breath moves in and through the area of the heart. Continuing to release, meaning emptying out. Continuing to be present. Continuing to be open and receptive. And with attention still focused in the heart, the area of the heart, and attention still on each and every breath, allow yourself to practice holding and being with a positive emotion or feeling. It might be peace, perhaps gratitude or joy or love. And with each mindful breath, imagining that you are breathing in and breathing out that quality, as if you stand at the center of a circle that is ever widening and expanding with each mindful and peaceful breath, extending that feeling, being that feeling, in stillness, in peace. And so it is, and so we are. Amen and amen. And namaste. Take a nice deep breath in and allow yourself to move around a little bit. Maybe even reach over for that cup of coffee or tea if you like. And so I shared a moment ago that we're going to be exploring a series based on my book, Ask Yourself This. And there are 7 chapters in the book dealing with 7 key areas of life and living with suggested questions to hold in each of these areas. And as I've mentioned, we're going to start with the questions and keys to growing spiritually. And there is a significant difference between spirituality and religion. Spirituality is about a certain kind of expression of and connection with the divine that is not limited to just one path or just one way. Religion oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes is more about what to do, whereas spirituality is very much about a way of being. A way of being in which we recognize that one presence and that one power, and we live from that, and we know that to be true of ourselves and to be true of everyone else as well. I want to share with you a piece of music that I think does a beautiful job in a very lively kind of way of reminding us, at least it reminds me, of the difference between religion and spirituality, conveyed in the thought that everything is holy now, everything is sacred now. So I hope you'll enjoy this piece by our friend, recording artist, New Thought artist. Her name is Faith Rivera. Please enjoy. I forgot I'm a one-person show here.
Each week, on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. he would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything, everything, everything is holy now. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two. Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad. The miracles don't happen still. But now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Oh, everything, everything, everything's a miracle. Everything, everything, everything's a miracle. Yeah. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better match trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, barely where my fingertips. Now I have to hold my breath, 'cause I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world out there, heaven second rate, hand down. But I'm walking with the reverend air, 'cause everything is holy now. Everything, everything, everything is holy now. Yeah. Everything, everything, everything is holy now. Yeah. Read a questioning child's face and say it's not a testament. Oh, that'd be very hard to say. Sing another new morning song and say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood and saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush, singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then, 'cause everything is holy now. Everything, everything, everything is holy now. Everything, everything, everything is holy now. Everything, every little thing, everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Hey, everything's a miracle. Everything is holy now. 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 Everything's a miracle. Everything is holy now.
Thank you, Faith. As I'm listening to her in this way, I can see you, Faith, dancing across our stage at the Unity Center and all of us completely engaged. We've got to have you come back real soon. So, keys to growing spiritually. keys to growing spiritually. I was pretty good in school. For the most part, I pulled straight A's without having to do a whole lot of work and a whole lot of studying because I quickly learned what the system was. I did the things I needed to do, but I'm not so sure that I really understood the whole process until my dad really started challenging me to think deeply. I remember him emphasizing, Wendy, it's not always about getting the right answer. You got to make sure that you're really focusing on the right questions. And I have to be honest, there were many times that he would say things like that to me that all I wanted him to do was be quiet so we could get on with whatever it was that I was struggling with and trying to find, quote, the right answer for. Because of that, because of eventually coming to understand just how right he really was, and coming to understand just how important it is to really think deeply and to question and to remain open and to remain curious, because that eventually became so instilled in me, I found that it was really a way I approached a lot of things in my life. And that turned into my wanting to share some of the kinds of questions and processes that I have used. The premise of my book is that the quality of our answers depends so much on the quality of the questions that we are asking. And I'm talking about the big life kinds of questions. To me, asking really good questions is a key pathway, a key doorway into personal growth and transformation. And so I wanted to begin, as I said, there are 7 chapters in the book and there are 7 key areas of life and living. And I think foundational is our growth spiritually, because we are not just physical beings, we are spiritual beings. And so there are 7 questions I hope to get to with you this morning, and if I don't get to all of them, they are in the book, and you can get the book from us or from Amazon or from Unity. But here are the questions. What do you know for sure? What do you personally know for sure? Second question, how big is your God? Whether you call God God or you call God by some other name, doesn't matter. But how big is your God? The third is, how wide is your circle? The fourth is, how much room do you give God to work it out? The fifth is faith or fear guiding you? The sixth is, what are you listening for? And the seventh is, what is God preparing you for? If you have the book, you know that it's a relatively short book and you can read it very, very quickly. And if you approach it like you approach most books and just read it quickly, you're going to miss what it's really about. Because you see, the book and the questions in it are really about helping you go deeper into yourself, to discover more about yourself, the way you think, what's standing in your way perhaps, where there's an opportunity to stretch and grow. And so it's really about self-discovery, and that is a process. So the first question, what do you know for sure? What do you know for sure? I remember a ministerial friend and colleague of mine, Reverend Howard Caesar, sharing about a lunch date he had had one day with a congregant, and that congregant leaning over to him and saying, well, Howard, what do you know for sure? And as I remember Howard relaying the story, he said, it kind of really brought me up short. It made me think, well, wait a minute, what is it that I really know for sure? And while I don't remember what Howard's answers were, I do remember the question. And the question was powerful for me to explore. What is it that I really know for sure? I want to share with you 5 things that I really know for sure. They may not be what you know for sure. Again, my invitation is for you to ask that question of yourself, because that question is going to guide an awful lot in your life. But here are 5 things that I know for sure. Number 1, there is a creative energy, presence, ground of being from which all we are and all that exists has come. I call that God. You might call that spirit, the divine, life with a capital L, doesn't matter what you call it, I call it God, a creative energy presence, grounded being from which all that is and all we are has come. A second thing I know for sure is that we are more than physical beings. The source of our being is more than just biological. We are all first and foremost spiritual beings. There's something in us beyond this body, beyond our past, beyond our future, beyond our experiences. We are more than this. The third, and this is so influential in my life, so much guides the way that I am, the way I think, what I do, is that there is an evolutionary impulse that is designed for improvement and success. An evolutionary impulse in all forms of life, in life that is designed for success and designed for improvement. And that leads me to approach the universe and life itself as benevolent, not malevolent. Fourth, that love is a real force. I know this for sure. Love is a real force. And fifth, that consciousness is formative. That what we think, what we hold in our awareness is formative. If we look out in our life, everything is created twice. Did you know that? Everything is first created in the mind and consciousness before it can ever be created in physical form. So how do you answer that question? Because the way that you answer it influences so much of your life. What is it that you really know for sure? And if you've never asked that question, I invite you, especially during this time of sheltering in place, we've got a little extra time on our hands, to open up into that question. What is it that you really know for sure? Second question that helps us grow spiritually is, how big is your God? When you think of God, what do you think of? My congregation knows that many times when I have been on a flight and sitting with a travel companion, and the person, you have that initial conversation, what do you do for a living? And it's like, I don't always like to answer that question because I feel a little self-conscious saying I'm a minister, and I have been now for a very long time, because of what that usually causes to happen in the other person. And oftentimes what it causes to happen in the other person is they will tell me all the reasons that they don't go to church anymore, or all the reasons that they don't believe in God. And I'll never forget one time saying to somebody who was telling me, well, I don't believe in God. I said, well, tell me about the God you don't believe in. And when they started to describe that God, I could look at them and say, I don't believe in that either. I don't believe in that either. God is not a physical being residing somewhere in time and space. God is the very impetus of life itself, the very ground of being, the infinite source of possibility. And we know that truly there are no words that can fully describe what God is, but we have got to stop making God in our image. We are made in the image and after the likeness of this presence, this power, this potential. Anyway, how big is your God? When you think of God, what are you thinking of? I remember hearing a minister friend of mine once say, there are two kinds of people. Those who tell God how big their problems are, and those who tell their problems how big their God is. I invite you to become one of the people in the latter category. William Jennings Bryan wrote a little paragraph trying to talk about God in a very visual way that spoke to me the very first time I ever read it, and I want to share it with you here. I have observed the power of the watermelon seed. It has the power of drawing from the ground and through itself 200,000 times its weight. 200,000 times its weight. When you can tell me how it takes this material and out of it colors an outside surface beyond the imitation of art, and then forms inside of it a white rind, and within that again a red heart, thickly inlaid with black seeds, each one of which in turn is capable of drawing through itself 200,000 times its weight. When you can explain to me the mystery of a watermelon, you can ask me to explain the mystery of God. Can I have an amen to that? Amen. Amen. One of the things that I've really enjoyed over my many years now in spiritual study and spiritual practice and my many years of being a minister is to see the evolution of consciousness and the shifting, I would call it, the shifting and the blurring of lines of demarcation between science and spirituality. Not between science and religion, but between science and spirituality. I'm reminded, I think it was in the earlier mid-70s, I read Fritjof Capra's book, The Dancing Woolly Masters. It was my first entree into the field of quantum physics and what I and others believe to be kind of a blurring of the lines between that realm of science and what I, as a minister, would call spirituality. I came across an article written by Sharon Begley. The name of the article was Science Finds God. And I want to read this passage to you because it speaks to me of this idea of an evolved understanding of what God is. She writes, "The more deeply scientists see into the secrets of the universe, you'd expect, the more God would fade away from their hearts and minds. But that's not how it went for Alan Sandage. He has spent a professional lifetime coaxing secrets out of the stars, peering through telescopes, in the hope of spying nothing less than the origins and destiny of the universe. He has actually figured out how fast the universe is expanding and how old it is, 15 billion years or so, through his observations of distant stars. But through it all, he who says he was almost a practicing atheist as a boy was nagged by the mysteries whose answers were not to be found in the glittering panoply of supernovas. Among them, why is there something rather than nothing?" I stopped there because when I first read that, it brought me up. I was riveted by that. Why is there something rather than nothing? There is a creative force or energy, whatever you want to call it, that has put into place the something rather than the nothing. Continuing to read, among them, why is there something rather than nothing? He began to despair of answering such questions through reason alone, and so at 50, he willed himself to accept God. I bet his concept of God is much more like mine. He said, "It was my science that drove me to the conclusion that the world is much more complicated than can be explained by science. It is only through the supernatural that I can understand the mystery of existence." So I invite you, if you've not ever really explored deeply your concept of God, to do so. Unity author and minister Ellen Davenport often says, "We need a God for grown-ups." And I think she's absolutely right. Third question, how wide is your circle? How wide is your circle? We have a saying in Unity, one God, many paths. And what we mean by that is our recognition of this one presence and power, and that it is called by many, many different names. And most importantly, and here's where we deviate from mainline Christianity for sure, that all spiritual paths and religions can lead to a deeper understanding and experience of God by whatever name we choose to call God. If you were to come into the lobby of our church, you would see a beautiful symbol. In fact, it's similar to the symbol on the pendant I'm wearing on my necklace that attempts to portray this idea of one God, many paths. I remember a story of a person coming to the Unity Center wanting to attend an activity that we were hosting. And this individual had never been to the center before, and one of my staff members had taken her through and was showing her the way to the room that she needed to go to. And on the way there, the individual saw the one God, many paths symbol. And she asked about it, and my staff member explained it to her. And the stranger's comment was, well, I think I believe that, but you got to remember the gate is very narrow. I thought, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. There are many paths, many ways to come into the divine. And so how wide is your circle? How wide, how open is your gate? We need to draw a circle wider. And there's an aspect of that that has to do with drawing a circle wider in terms of the human family, caring beyond just our own and just those that are similar to us. I've always been inspired by this true story of a Protestant chaplain in World War I who was serving our troops in Italy. And while there, he befriended a Catholic priest. Well, eventually the chaplain and his unit was moved on, and the unit suffered a lot of casualties. Among them was the chaplain. When the priest learned of the death of his friend, the Protestant chaplain, the priest asked the military if he could have the body and bury his friend, the chaplain, in the church cemetery. And our military agreed, but the priest was not able at that time to get permission from the Catholic Church to bury a non-Catholic in the church cemetery. And so he buried him outside the cemetery fence. Years later, another veteran who had served with the chaplain and had befriended him and had heard of the friendship that the chaplain had with the priest, the veteran wanted to visit and pay his respects to his friend, the chaplain. And when he got to the little church and met with the priest, he was taken to the graveside, and he was surprised to see the grave inside the fence. And he said to the priest, "Wow, I see that you got permission to bury him in the cemetery." And the priest's answer was, "No, they told me where I couldn't bury him, but nobody told me I couldn't move the fence." I think we are living in a time where we really need to be more kind-hearted, more inclusive, more open in moving the fence. And I believe that for some of us, and maybe for many of us, it takes a great deal of deep interpersonal and spiritual growth work sometimes to knock down our prejudices and our biases of those whose sexual orientation may be different than our own, or political viewpoints, or nationalities, or religions, and to say, wait a minute, we are not a human race. We need to act as if we are what we are, which is a human family. Fourth question is, how much room are you giving God to work it out? I don't know how this is for you, but I am pretty much an organized person, and I thrive in structure, and I have lots of goals and plans. But one of the things I have come to really understand is my goals and plans can only get me so far. My very best thinking can only get me so far. And that the times that I have tended to get myself in trouble or to set up unnecessary obstacles for myself have been when I've tried to do too much on my own or try to figure everything out on my own. And instead of stepping back and going, wait a minute, I need to give God, Spirit, the divine, a little bit of room to work in me and through me and around me. Here's a cute story. It's a story about a pastor who had a kitten. And his kitten got outside and climbed up on a tree in the pastor's backyard and was afraid to come down. And no amount of coaxing on the part of the pastor was successfully getting the little kitty to climb down out of the tree. And because the tree wasn't quite strong enough, the pastor couldn't try to climb up, and the kitten was too high for the pastor to get a ladder. So the pastor had this brilliant idea. And it was this. He could tie a rope to the tree at one end, and the other end of the rope would be tied to his car. And he would get in his car, and he would slowly pull back the car out a ways so that the tree would bend. And as the tree would bend, it would eventually bend to the place where he could stop, get out, and get the kitty cat to come down. And so he was just about there, and he thought, okay, I'll just go a little bit further, and he did, and the rope broke. And you can imagine, boing, and the little kitty just kind of went sailing in the air somewhere. And the pastor was quite distraught over this and was wandering around the neighborhood, checking and doing the responsible thing, trying to find where did the little kitty wind up. It wasn't that it had fallen too far, but where was the kitty? Couldn't find it. So he, said a prayer for the little kitten. Into your hands, God, I commit this little creature, help her. And a couple of days later, the pastor is in the grocery store, and he runs into a congregant, and they start to talk a little bit, and he looks inside the congregant's grocery cart, and in it is cat food. Now, this pastor knows this congregant doesn't like cats at all. And he inquires, well, you don't like cats. What's the cat food about? And the woman says, Pastor, you are not going to believe this. You know how our daughter has been on us to get her a kitten, and we have said no, no, no. And just the other day we said to her, okay, if God gives you a kitten, you can keep it. And Pastor, you will not believe this, but she was praying, and all of a sudden, flying over our backyard fence, this little kitty comes landing. There you go. There you go. Now, whether you believe that story to be absolutely true or not, it does paint this picture of how much room are we willing to give God to work it out. If we can't even really define what God is, if we can't explain why there is something rather than nothing, isn't that enough to cause us to stop and say, wait a minute, as smart as I may be, as good as I may be at thinking things through, as logical and rational as I may be, maybe there's a bit of a limit to what I can do on my own. And maybe if I were to step back, take a breath and go, maybe I need to give God a little more room. Maybe I need to give the divine a little more time. Maybe something else has to happen before the big thing that I'm trying to achieve or accomplish is going to happen. That's what I mean by giving God a little more room to work it out. So the question is, how much room are you giving God to work things out? And the fifth is fear or faith guiding your decisions? This is such a powerful one, and it really reveals to us where we are as people, and it colors so much of what we say yes to or say no to in our lives. Is faith or fear guiding your decisions? In the study of those who have had near-death experiences and have come back, and that's why it's called near-death, there's a certain consistency in what they describe and a certain set of feelings they seem to emerge from that experience holding. And one of them is the feeling, the knowingness that it is life, though in different forms, that is real, that it is love that is real, that it is the light and not the darkness that is real. And they often report coming back with so much less fear and the ability to live their life in a different way because they have so much less fear. Jesus talked about if you have faith as tiny as a grain of mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move, and it will move. I think the point that he was trying to make is that each of us does have faith within us, and that it grows stronger by using what we do have. And to the extent that we are willing to be guided by faith rather than fear, we will find ourselves stepping into larger and more beautiful dimensions of our life. We'll find ourselves saying yes to possibilities, even though we may have to stretch and grow into them. So is it faith or fear guiding your decisions? One of the powerful story that impacted me the very first time, I think I saw this in a film documentary, and I related to this story the idea of faith and starting with whatever faith you do have and working to build on that thought by thought and experience by experience. And it's about the original suspension bridge that was built over Niagara Falls. At one part of the falls, is a very deep gorge, and it was impassable without the help of a bridge. And the challenge was there were successful businesses on both sides of the deep gorge. But to get to those, traveling the Niagara River by boat took many days. And so it was determined that the way to improve this challenge, or the answer to the challenge, was to build a suspension bridge, a railroad bridge. But the challenge was how to do that. Because all of the normal ways to put pylons into the water on both sides couldn't work because the current of the water was much too swift. And so the answer was, I'm going to read this, the answer was a beginning wire, 36 strands of number 10 wire wound together would be enough to hold 2 men in a bucket contraption to begin to build the bridge. So they knew that what they needed, right, to be able to have something that would be strong enough to hold the men in a bucket contraption to build the bridge, but it was how to get the initial wire across. And one of the engineers on the project, Theodore Elliott, prayed and got an idea, and he thought a kite could take the string across the gorge. Now you got to know this is an old story. I should have looked to get the dates for you, but I didn't. Forgive me for that. Because he said he would pay $10 for the winning kite contest. Well, there was a young boy, I think it was, who was successful in flying a kite with an initial string, taking it from one side of the gorge to the other. And from that single strand, and this is a part I invite you to hold on to, from this single strand, Elliot attached another heavier strand, then another, and another, and another, until eventually the heavier string was so strong that they were able to put the wires in place and have a cable that they could begin using to build what became the bridge. And I think of that, wow, that thin kite string initially taking across what needed to be the beginning of what became a massive structure that could hold a train. And so the same is true for us in so many ways. Even if you think you don't have a whole lot of faith, it's using whatever faith you do have. The 6th question is, what are you listening to and for? What are you listening? I should put it the other way around. What are you listening for, and what are you listening to? What are you listening for, and what are you listening to? We teach in metaphysics the importance of listening for and then to that still small voice of wisdom, that still small voice of spirit. And it's important to note that what we listen for is directly linked to what we value. There was a native New Yorker walking with his friend who happened to be a Native American. They were walking down the sidewalk, busy sidewalk at lunchtime in Times Square. I was born in New York. I'm a native New Yorker, been into the city many, many times. This sounds at lunchtime are overwhelming in Times Square. And so this native New Yorker and his Native American friend are walking along the sidewalk, a lot of noise, cars honking, the whole bit. And the Native American friend says, "Wait, I hear a cricket. I hear a cricket." And his friend said, you got to be kidding. You can't possibly hear a cricket amidst all of this noise. And he said, "No, I'm sure I hear a cricket." And they walked on a little further, and sure enough, in a planter, He looked in and there was a cricket and they could see it, and when they got real quiet and still, they could hear it again. And his friend said, "You must have superhuman hearing. How could you possibly hear that sound amidst all the other noise?" And his friend said, "No, I don't have superhuman hearing. It's that what we value, we pay attention to. Let me show you what I mean." And so his friend took some money out of his pocket, some coins, and dropped it on the sidewalk. And within like 10 feet all around, everybody stopped to look to see were their coins that had dropped out of the pocket. And he said, "See, it's about that. It's about what we have trained ourselves to value and what we have trained ourselves to listen to and listen for." Now there's a seventh question, and I'm going to share it with you without giving you any commentary on it, or not very much commentary. And it is, what is God preparing you for? This to me is so important in our spiritual growth and development, to recognize that we are each here for a reason. We are not here by mistake or by accident, not by divine accident. We are here for a reason. And what I know is that those who live the most satisfied lives, they're not perfect lives, but the most satisfied lives, are those who understand what their purpose is. And one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves to help us move into a greater understanding of our purpose is, what is God preparing me for? What is God preparing you for? Right now, in this time of sheltering in place, in this time of everything being topsy-turvy and uncertain, and we're feeling all different kinds of thoughts and feelings and fears probably as well, in the midst of this confusion, if you were to stop and ask yourself and ponder this for a while, what is God preparing you for? What is this time preparing you for? You might be delighted and surprised at the answers you get. Namaste. All right. And so ordinarily, if we were at the Unity Center, we would be moving into a time in our service where we would invite those who are visiting for the first time to pick up a guest packet and to join us for some delicious coffee or cappuccinos or mochas in our Sangha Cafe. And obviously we can't do that now, but as soon as we're back on our physical campus, we'll be sure to do that. If you are tuning in for the very first time and you would like to know more about the Unity Center or more about Unity, please reach out to us. You can call us, you can email us. We'll be happy to respond. And what I believe is so important is for each of us to find a spiritual path and teaching that speaks to our mind, our heart, and our soul, whatever that path and teaching may be. And then to find a spiritual community that we feel comfortable in, so that we can be nurtured in our spiritual growth and we can be supportive of others in theirs. So if you don't have a spiritual path or home and are listening for the first time, feel free to reach out to us and let us help you know a little bit more about Unity. Only a few announcements that I have for you during this time of sheltering in place. Please do continue to watch for announcements from us and emails from us about upcoming activities and events. Please know that on Wednesday of this week, I am offering a Zoom call in both the morning and the evening, one at 10 o'clock and one at 7 o'clock. I am calling these Making It Through Together. And the theme for this Wednesday is, what day is it anyway? What day is it anyway, when nothing is the same? And I offer this to you as my gift. If you do need to register for it though, and there's information that will be coming through to you on how to do that. And so that's on Wednesday. What day is this anyway, when nothing is the same? Kim Kennedy, our Unity Prayer Chaplain, is going to be offering midday centering prayer on Thursday at noon. And longtime member and meditation teacher David Stanley is going to be offering guided meditation and instruction on Thursday at 7 o'clock. To those of you who continue to bless the Unity Center during these times with your gifts, We appreciate it greatly. Thank you so very much for that. If you've never contributed before and feel inspired to do so today, know that you can contribute via our app. If you don't have the app, it's a great time to get it. It's free and there's lots of good information on it. Get it wherever you get your programs, your apps, and just look for the Unity Center. You can make a one-time gift if you like, or an ongoing gift. And I'd like to just ask you to imagine that we are sharing our gifts and holding them in our hands, blessing them with this statement. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is. And so however and wherever you are spending this time, may you remain healthy, may you practice all the things we know we need to be practicing right now, sheltering in place, only going outside when we absolutely have to, washing our hands a lot, wearing our face masks, and so forth. And we'll close now with our prayer of protection. Please join me. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, wherever we go, God is, and all is well. Amen. Namaste, and God bless.